till I get you in the ring. We see what? Get your hands off of me.
From Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier literally throwing punches at a press event to Mike Tyson breaking his hand in a 4 a.m. street fight with Mitch Green,
out of my head, bam, was so put.
And Sonny Liston beating a police officer so badly the man needed surgery. In this video, we're looking at boxing legends who got into real fights outside the ring. Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier. Let's kick things off with the most well-documented real physical altercation between two heavyweight champions that the world has ever witnessed. On January 23, 1974, at the ABC television studios in New York City, Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier turned what was supposed to be a calm promotional segment into an absolute melee that shocked the sports world and became an instant legend. The setting was ABC's Wide World of Sports, hosted by the legendary broadcaster Howard Cosell, whose distinctive voice had narrated some of boxing's greatest moments. The segment's purpose was simple enough: review footage from their epic 1971 fight of the century, which Frazier had won in a grueling 15-round battle at Madison Square Garden, and build anticipation for their upcoming rematch, dubbed Super Fight 2, scheduled for January 28th at that same hallowed venue. The tension between these two men had been simmering for years, fueled by Ali's relentless psychological warfare. What made their rivalry so uniquely bitter was the deeply personal nature of Ali's attacks. He didn't just question Frazier's boxing ability, he questioned his very identity as a black man in America during one of the most racially charged periods in the nation's history. But Ali, ever the provocateur and master of promotion, couldn't help himself that day in the studio. He started calling Frazier ignorant, implying the Philadelphia slugger was uneducated and unsophisticated.
I want to make one prediction. I'm not calling around. I predict that when I meet Joe Frazier, this will be like a good amateur fighting a real professional. This will be like a kid out of the Olympics meeting the fastest heavyweight champion that ever lived. This will be no contest. This fight will be much easier. He will be easier to hit. He will not be as much trouble or as awkward as Oscar Bonavino.
Worse still, he labeled him an Uncle Tom, a devastating accusation that painted Frazier as a traitor to his race, a puppet of the white establishment. These insults cut deep into the racial and political divisions of that turbulent era, when black Americans were still fighting for civil rights and cultural identity. What made these words particularly painful, and what fueled Frazier's rage for decades afterward, was a cruel irony that Ali conveniently ignored. During Ali's boxing exile from 1967 to 1970, when he was banned from the sport for refusing military induction, Frazier had actually supported Ali financially. He lobbied politicians to restore Ali's boxing license. He lent him money when Ali was struggling. Frazier had been a friend when Ali needed one most, and now Ali was publicly humiliating him on national television. Frazier, who had endured years of Ali calling him ugly, comparing his features to a gorilla's, and painting him as a tool of the white establishment, finally reached his breaking point on that January afternoon. Something inside him snapped. He stood up from his seat, abandoning any pretense of the calm, professional interview they were supposed to be conducting. He leaned into a still-seated Ali, his face contorted with years of suppressed fury, and demanded answers. The studio fell silent as Frazier confronted his tormentor. As Frazier turned momentarily toward the intervening crew members who sensed the explosion about to occur, Ali seized the opportunity with the same instincts that made him great in the ring, grabbing Frazier around the neck in a headlock and yanking him down to the studio floor. What followed was pure, unscripted chaos captured live on camera. The two heavyweight legends wrestled and scuffled on the ground, rolling around the studio floor, grappling furiously while stunned crew members scrambled to intervene. No clean punches landed in the traditional sense, but the physicality was unmistakably real. This wasn't staged promotion or theatrical trash talk. This was genuine hatred boiling over. Howard Cosell, ever the professional, provided live play-by-play amid the mayhem, his voice rising with genuine shock and excitement. Security personnel, crew members, and associates from both camps, including Ali's brother Rahman, rushed in to separate the two titans after about 10 to 20 chaotic seconds that felt like an eternity to everyone watching. The aftermath made headlines across the globe. Both fighters were fined small amounts by the New York State Athletic Commission for their unprofessional conduct, but the incident massively boosted interest in their rematch 5 days later, which Ali won by unanimous decision in a tactical, clinch-heavy affair. But if Ali and Frazier's televised brawl shocked America, the next story takes us far from bright studio lights and straight into a dark Harlem street. Mike Tyson versus Mitch Green. If there's one story that perfectly encapsulates Mike Tyson's volatile life outside the ring during his tumultuous reign as heavyweight champion, it's the legendary street fight with Mitch Green, also known as Blood, in the early morning hours of August 23, 1988, outside Dapper Dan's boutique on 125th Street in Harlem. This wasn't a press conference scuffle or a promotional stunt. This was a real bare-knuckle confrontation between two heavyweight fighters on a dark Harlem street corner. 2 years earlier, in May 1986, a 19-year-old undefeated Mike Tyson had beaten Green by unanimous decision over 10 brutal rounds at Madison Square Garden. It wasn't a knockout victory. Green went the distance, clinching heavily to survive against the young destroyer, but Tyson had thoroughly outclassed him. Green, a former Harlem gang leader with the notorious Black Spades, had long been bitter about that fight. The purse disparity gnawed at him. Tyson earned far more money despite Green being the more experienced fighter at the time. Green also claimed that promoter Don King owed him money for a rematch that never materialized. In his mind, he had unfinished business with Iron Mike, and the streets of Harlem were his territory. On that fateful summer night, Tyson, then the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world at just 22 years old, was out late partying amid significant personal turmoil. His marriage to actress Robin Givens was crumbling publicly, and chaos seemed to follow him everywhere. Around 4 to 5 a.m., he stopped at the 24-hour Dapper Dan's, famous throughout hip-hop culture for its custom fashion, to pick up an $850 white leather jacket emblazoned with the phrase, "Don't believe the hype," a reference to the Public Enemy song that captured the era's spirit. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood grapevine that the heavyweight champion was in Blood's territory, vulnerable and alone in the pre-dawn darkness. Green confronted him outside the store, trash-talking aggressively and demanding either money or a rematch, or perhaps both. The tension escalated rapidly from words to something far more dangerous. The accounts of what happened next differ wildly depending on who's telling the story. Tyson's version, shared in his autobiography Undisputed Truth and various podcasts over the years, claims Green was aggressive, high on angel dust, PCP, reached for Tyson's pockets, and swung first. According to Tyson, he defended himself with a devastating overhand right, bare-knuckled with his rings turned inward for maximum damage, dropping Green multiple times on the concrete, but Green wouldn't stay down.
He was getting high, robbing people, extorting people, so he came in there at 4 in the morning, and he's high, so he came in there and he started talking real greasy to me. And we got outside somewhere, and then we started fighting.
And you won?
Kind of, yeah. He was in bad condition.
In Tyson's colorful telling, Green kept rising. Like Jason from Friday the 13th, seemingly impervious to punishment. After Green allegedly smashed Tyson's Rolls-Royce side mirror, Tyson exited the vehicle and finished him with more punches, later admitting he feared he'd killed the man when Green's head hit the pavement. Green tells a dramatically different story. In later interviews, including a detailed Vlad TV interview, he denied being on drugs, claimed Tyson sucker punched him without warning, called Tyson Cotton Mike to suggest he was soft, and bragged that he remained standing throughout the assault despite taking the champion's best shots.
Said he was down the block. So I went down there. But I approached him. He was already down there. Mm-hmm. He was with Walter Berry and a few other people. I was by myself. So I ain't starting no fight. But I was calling them out. Tell me why I want to rematch and he didn't beat me, donkey beat me. So he ain't beat me. So he should start his fight, yo. Punk was scared.
In Green's version, he was simply seeking a legitimate rematch, not looking for a street fight. The physical evidence, however, was undeniable and made newspapers across the country.
I took my head, bam, it was sucker punch. If it wasn't, I got him. He hit me. And he ran. When I say ran, he walked fast as the car. He walked fast. He got in the car. So I hit the car and they was holding me.
Well, you broke the rearview mirror, he said.
Yeah, they was holding me.
Green suffered a badly swollen left eye that was completely shut, along with a deep cut across his nose and bridge requiring 5 stitches. Photographs of his battered, disfigured face circulated widely, providing visual proof of the champion's devastating power even without gloves. Tyson didn't escape unscathed either. He fractured his right hand, a hairline fracture on the 3rd metacarpal, from the force of his bare-knuckle punches against against Green's skull. This injury forced the postponement of his scheduled title defense against British challenger Frank Bruno, costing promoters millions and creating a media firestorm. Green eventually sued Tyson for $25 million in assault claims, but the case dragged on for years before settling in 1997 for a mere $45,000, a fraction of what Green sought. A restraining order was issued to permanently keep Green away from Tyson. Tyson's late-night chaos became boxing folklore, but not every legend waited until fame to throw down. For this next legend, the real fights happened long before he ever laced up a pair of gloves. George Foreman. Unlike Tyson's documented Harlem Brawl or the Ali Frazier studio incident that played out on national television, Big George has no documented real-life street fights as a professional boxer. But his pre-boxing youth tells a vastly different and far darker story that shaped the fearsome champion he would become. Foreman grew up dirt poor in Houston's notorious Fifth Ward, nicknamed the Bloody Fifth, one of America's roughest and most dangerous neighborhoods during that era. Violence wasn't just common there. It was a way of life, a survival mechanism for young men with no opportunities and fewer options. By his mid-teens, Foreman had dropped out of school, become a neighborhood bully feared by other kids, and turned to serious crime to survive. In his own words, Foreman openly admitted to being a mugger and street robber, robbing people at knife point or by force for money, food, or anything valuable he could get his hands on. Frequent street brawls were simply part of daily life in the Fifth Ward, and young George was right in the thick of it all, using his imposing size and natural power to take what he wanted. One pivotal story Foreman often recounted involved hiding under a house from police dogs after a mugging gone wrong, covered in mud and raw sewage. As he lay there in the filth, realizing his victim's stolen clothes were literally rotting on his body, he had a profound epiphany that this destructive life was leading him nowhere but prison or an early grave. This rock-bottom moment pushed him to join the Job Corps at age 16, where a counselor introduced him to boxing, and everything changed. After his 1977 religious experience following a near-death moment in his dressing room, Foreman became an ordained minister, preached on street corners, and founded a youth center to help kids avoid the desperate life he once lived. The terrifying, scowling 1970s Foreman, who intimidated the entire boxing world, transformed into the famously jolly, smiling pitchman of his remarkable comeback era, proof that even the most violent pasts can lead to peaceful futures. Foreman's violent youth was a turning point, but Jake LaMotta, his offering life was so brutal that even Hollywood couldn't show the full truth, and his fights didn't stop when the cameras cut. Jake LaMotta. Jake the Bronx Bull. LaMotta lived up to his nickname far more outside the ring than in it. While he was unbreakable in sanctioned fights, never knocked down legitimately in 106 professional bouts, his real-life violence was chaotic, criminal, and deeply personal. LaMotta's autobiography, Raging Bull: My Story, the basis for Scorsese's legendary film, revealed horrors that the movie actually toned down. His father forced young Jake to fight, neighborhood kids in street brawls for entertainment, adults tossed pennies as prizes, and the money helped pay rent. As a juvenile delinquent, LaMotta engaged in muggings, robberies, and constant fights. One infamous incident detailed in his book describes how he beat a bookmaker named Jimmy Gordon so severely with a blunt object that he believed he'd killed him. He fled and lived with the guilt for years, only learning decades later the man survived, though with permanent injuries. His adult life proved equally dark. LaMotta was married 7 times and openly admitted to physically abusing multiple wives, driven by paranoid jealousy. His autobiography even described sexual assaults, details so graphic that Scorsese left them out of the movie entirely. In 1958, 4 years after retiring, LaMotta owned a Miami nightclub where he was arrested for forcing a 17-year-old girl into prostitution. He spent time on Rikers Island. For Golden Era fans, LaMotta remains proof that some legends were truly raging everywhere. No gloves needed. If LaMotta was wild, then Sonny Liston was something else entirely. His reputation didn't just come from fear. It came from a past so violent it blurred the line between fighter and enforcer. Sonny Liston. Sonny Liston was the ultimate real-life boogeyman of boxing's golden era. His offering toughness operated on another level entirely. A lifelong criminal record, mob enforcer work, and a reputation so terrifying that even hardened fighters trembled. Born into brutal poverty as one of 25 children on an Arkansas sharecropper farm, Liston endured savage beatings from his father that left permanent back scars. He fled to St. Louis as a teen, becoming a mugger, robber, and gang member, nicknamed the Yellow Shirt Bandit for his robbery outfit. In 1950, 1950, he was convicted of armed robbery and larceny, serving over 2 years in Missouri State Penitentiary, where he discovered boxing. After parole, he turned pro but supplemented income as a mob enforcer for St. Louis and Philadelphia racketeers, including John Vitale, Frankie Carbo, and Blinky Palermo. His job, breaking legs, collecting debts, intimidating union members. The incident that truly defined his reputation occurred on May 5, 1956. Officer Thomas Mello confronted Liston over an illegally parked taxi. Words escalated. Liston claimed racial slurs were used, and he snapped. He beat the cop senseless, broke his knee, gashed his face, and took his service revolver. He was charged with assault on a police officer and robbery of a deadly weapon, pleading guilty and serving 9 months. The relatively light sentence for crippling a cop fueled rumors of mob protection. As Chuck Wepner once said, Sonny was the most intimidating man who ever lived. But long before Liston terrified the heavyweight division, Jack Dempsey was fighting in places far rougher than a boxing ring. Saloon floors, mining camps, and train yards across the American West. Jack Dempsey. Jack the Manasseh Mauler. Dempsey forged his legendary toughness almost entirely in unsanctioned bare-knuckle brawls long before professional boxing. From ages 16 to 21, roughly 1911 to 1916, Dempsey lived as a hobo, riding freight trains, sleeping in jungle camps, and working odd jobs in mining towns across Colorado, Utah, Nevada, and beyond. To eat, he turned to raw violence. His routine, self-reported in his autobiography, was audacious. He'd swagger into a saloon, often going by Kid Blackie due to his jet black hair, and announce his infamous challenge. If someone accepted, bets were collected, anywhere from a few dollars to 25. Fights were bare knuckle, no rules, no refs, often in back rooms or on sawdust floors until one man quit or was knocked cold. Estimates of his unsanctioned fights vary wildly. Dempsey claimed dozens. Friends estimated anywhere from 50 to 450 total. Key locations included Montrose, Cripple Creek, and Durango in Colorado, Goldfield, Tonopah, and Ely in Nevada, Salt Lake City, Ogden, and Provo in Utah. One remarkable late-life exception occurred in the 1970s when Dempsey was approximately 78 years old. In New York City, 2 muggers tried to rob him on the street. Dempsey beat them both senseless. One needed hospitalization. The Manasseh Mauler's power never truly faded, and while Dempsey fought for money, Tony 2-Ton Galento fought anywhere, anytime, sometimes even hours before stepping into the ring, beer glass to the face and all. Tony 2-Ton Galento. Tony 2-Ton Galento, the beer-swilling, cigar-chomping heavyweight from Orange, New Jersey, was as much a barroom legend as a ring warrior. At 5'9" and usually around 235 pounds, he owned the famous Nut Club Tavern where he bartended, bounced, and lived the rough-and-tumble life that made him a 1930s press darling. The most infamous incident occurred on July 2, 1940, the very afternoon of his scheduled bout with ex-champ Max Baer. Galento was already drunk at his Nut Club bar, stuffed with spaghetti and meatballs. His brother tried to drag him out to sober up and prepare for the fight. Words turned to shouts, and his brother smashed a beer glass into Tony's face, badly splitting his lip. Galento needed stitches hours before the fight. He showed up bloody, the cut reopened early, and Baer pummeled him until the referee stopped it in the 8th round, though Galento refused to quit from his stool. Classic 2-Ton. He fought anyway and took a savage beating. His early career included work as a 25-a-week saloon bouncer where he honed his skills in back alley brawls. For Depression-era fans, Galento embodied the everyman slugger, a tubby tavern owner who actually floored Joe Louis and went right back to pouring drinks. Galento lived like a barroom brawler come to life, but the next legend was the opposite. Sugar Ray Robinson, the man who proved you could be the most dangerous fighter alive and still avoid street trouble. Sugar Ray Robinson. Sugar Ray Robinson, widely regarded as the greatest pound-for-pound boxer ever to lace up gloves, presents a stark contrast to many of the legends on this list. Despite his flamboyant and highly visible lifestyle, pink Cadillac, Harlem nightclub ownership, massive entourage of handlers and friends, impeccably sharp suits, Robinson has no documented street fights, bar brawls, assaults on strangers, or criminal arrests as a professional boxer. He walked through the most dangerous neighborhoods in America as a celebrity and never found himself in unsanctioned trouble. His youth, however, told a considerably different story that hints at the fighter lurking beneath that elegant exterior. Born Walker Smith Jr. in Georgia and later raised in the tough streets of Detroit and Harlem during the Depression era, young Robinson ran with a violent street gang and got into frequent trouble with the law and rival crews. The streets were unforgiving, and Robinson learned early how to handle himself in chaotic situations where rules didn't exist and survival meant everything. But unlike many of his contemporaries who carried that street violence throughout their lives, Robinson channeled all of that raw aggression into boxing remarkably early. He turned amateur around age 15 and went professional in 1940, leaving the gang life firmly behind him as his star began to rise. There have been allegations of domestic violence from his first wife, Edna Mae Holly, mentioned in passing in various biographies and online forums over the years. However, no arrests, lawsuits, or contemporary news reports ever confirmed these troubling claims, leaving them in the realm of rumor and speculation rather than documented fact. For fans who idolized his unmatched elegance and mesmerizing ring artistry, Robinson's legacy fits the carefully cultivated myth perfectly. 109 devastating knockouts, absolutely deadly with gloves on, sweet as sugar off. He proved that violence could be contained, channeled, and ultimately transformed into pure art, a lesson many other champions on this list never learned. Robinson kept his violence inside the ropes, and so did Rocky Marciano, another legend who built his myth on knockout power, not off-ring chaos. Rocky Marciano, the undefeated heavyweight champion at 49-0 with 43 knockouts, was a ferocious Brockton blockbuster in the ring, relentless, crude, and devastating, but one of the most disciplined and gentlemanly legends outside it. Growing up in a tough Italian immigrant neighborhood in Brockton's working-class streets, he scrapped as a kid, fighting siblings and locals, honing that unbreakable chin and power. Once he turned pro in 1947, there are no documented street fights, bar brawls, assaults, or arrests. One minor W2 anecdote exists. While stationed in Britain, he was briefly jailed for roughing up 2 English civilians, more bar scuffle than serious brawl, with no charges sticking. Contemporaries universally described him as gentle outside the ring, compassionate, and a gentleman, visiting sick children, doing charity work, maintaining zero ego-fueled chaos. He retired at 32 to spend time with his wife and kids, turning down millions for comebacks. For older fans, Marciano's lack of off-ring drama is part of his myth. Pure power inside the ropes, zero nonsense outside. Roberto Duran, Roberto Manos de Piedra. Duran, Panama's beloved 4-weight world champion and one of the greatest lightweights to ever step into a boxing ring, earned a fearsome reputation as a street-tough brawler inside the ropes. His relentless aggression, iron chin, and devastating punching power made him one of the most feared fighters of his generation. But outside the ring, there are no major documented adult brawls, street fights, or assaults comparable to legends like Tyson, Liston, or LaMotta. His post-fame life was defined more by celebration than confrontation. His pre-boxing youth, however, was genuinely brutal and forged the warrior mentality that made him legendary. Raised in the El Chorrillo slum of Panama City, nicknamed La Casa de Piedra, House of Stone, Duran grew up in grinding, desperate poverty that most people cannot imagine. He shined shoes on street corners and stole fruit from market vendors just to survive another day. Food was never guaranteed, and weakness meant exploitation. In that unforgiving environment, he fought constantly in street brawls and vicious schoolyard fights where there were no rules and no referees to save you. One notable school fight at age 13 proved so violent that it got him expelled, ending whatever formal education he might have received. These brutal scraps honed his ferocious, swarming fighting style that would later terrorize opponents worldwide. He turned professional at just 16 years old in 1968, building a record on that raw, untamed aggression channeled into something productive. But as a professional enjoying fame and fortune, despite his wild persona, legendary partying, womanizing, and the infamous No Mas controversy against Sugar Ray Leonard, no police assaults, bar fights, or unsanctioned street rematches appear on his record. His demons were excess and indulgence, not violence against civilians. Duran channeled the streets into boxing glory without the tragic self-destruction that plagued so many of his peers. His 70 knockouts across 103 professional victories speak volumes about where his violence truly belonged, inside the ring, under the lights, where it made him immortal. But if Marciano was disciplined, Roberto Duran was forged in chaos, his real fights happening long before he became Hands of Stone. Marvelous Marvin Hagler. Marvin Hagler, the undisputed middleweight king who dominated the division from 1980 to 1987 with a record of 62 wins, 3 losses, and 2 draws including 52 knockouts, was a terrifying pressure fighter inside the squared circle. His shaved head gleaming under the arena lights, his relentless forward movement, and his seemingly unbreakable will made him one of the most feared middleweights in boxing history. But outside the ring, he was one of the most disciplined and controversy-free boxers of his era, a stark contrast as to many champions who struggled with demons beyond the ropes. His early life provided plenty of reasons for bitterness and rage. Born in Newark, New Jersey, amid crushing poverty and the violent chaos of the 1967 race riots, his family home actually burned down during the unrest. Young Marvin experienced trauma that could have easily sent him down a destructive path. His family relocated to Brockton, Massachusetts, seeking a fresh start in safer streets. Despite this hard-knock environment that built his iron will and unshakable determination, there are no documented street fights, bar brawls, assaults, arrests, or unsanctioned violence during his professional career. Boxing became his sole outlet for aggression, and he protected that outlet fiercely. Hagler channeled his tough upbringing into monk-like dedication that became legendary in boxing circles. He was famous for running road work in heavy army boots, avoiding partying entirely, and eliminating all distractions from his life during training camps. While other fighters succumbed to temptations that fame and money provided, Hagler remained laser-focused on his craft. Fame, the Petronelli brothers' strict management style, and his own Spartan lifestyle kept him completely out of trouble throughout his career. He was known universally as a devoted family man and consummate professional who understood that his violence belonged only in the ring. Post-retirement, he acted in Italian action films, stayed remarkably low-key, and avoided the spotlight until his sudden death in 2021 from natural causes related to heart issues. For fans who witnessed the legendary Four Kings era, Hagler's complete lack of off-ring drama is precisely what made him marvelous. All business, all warrior, zero nonsense. Duran carried the streets into the ring, but Marvin Hagler flipped the script. His upbringing was rough, but his life outside boxing remained shockingly clean. Joe Louis, the Brown Bomber and longest reigning heavyweight champion from 1937 to 1949, was renowned as a quiet, dignified gentleman outside the ring. Despite growing up poor in Detroit during the Depression and facing constant racial threats in the Jim Crow era, Louis has no documented street fights, bar brawls, or unsanctioned violence. He channeled his aggression strictly into the ring, 66 wins, 52 knockouts, and was a model of restraint. This was partly because the establishment and the U.S. government during the expected him to be a credit to his race. Louis faced real threats, death threats from racists, especially before the 1938 Max Schmeling rematch, but he never retaliated physically. He carried himself with class to avoid giving critics ammunition. One oft-repeated myth suggests a 1930s bar fight or street altercation. Pure fiction, as biographers confirm zero off-ring violence. In an era when many heavyweights had real street credentials, Louis proved you could be the baddest man on the planet without ever throwing a punch outside the ropes. Louis brought dignity to destruction, and Lennox Lewis followed that path, using his brain as much as his fists, even when press conferences turned into all-out brawls. Lennox Lewis. Lennox, the Lion. Lewis, the last undisputed heavyweight champion, was a cerebral, disciplined giant. Chess player, gentleman, no criminal record. His real off-ring incidents were two high-profile promotional scuffles, both ending quickly with security intervention. The big one occurred on January 22, 2002, at the Hudson Theater in New York City during a press conference for their upcoming title fight. Tyson stormed across the stage, threw a left hook at one of Lewis's bodyguards, and chaos erupted. Lewis landed a big right hand on Tyson, dropping him briefly, and entourages piled in. During the melee, Tyson bit Lewis's thigh, later fined $335. WBC President Jose Sulaiman was knocked out cold when he hit his head on a table. A second incident occurred in 2001 while promoting his rematch with Hasim Rahman on ESPN's Up Close. The two briefly wrestled and grappled on the studio floor. Similar to Ali Frazier's 1974 brawl, more shoving than fighting. Lewis handled chaos like a champion, but Oliver McCall faced a different kind of fight, one not against other boxers, but against himself. Oliver McCall. Oliver, the Atomic Bull. McCall, the former WBC heavyweight champion who shocked the world by stopping Lennox Lewis in 1994, grew up tough on Chicago's South Side, but his off-ring troubles were almost entirely tied to severe crack cocaine addiction rather than legendary brawls. His extensive criminal record includes multiple arrests for cocaine and marijuana possession, probation violations, and rehab stints. In January 2006, he was tasered and arrested in Nashville for criminal trespassing. A 2009 arrest for cocaine and a crack pipe violated his probation. Some incidents involved antisocial violence or assaulting officers, but nothing like the legendary civilian fistfights of other champions. His demons led to the infamous 1997 in-ring breakdown against Lewis, crying and refusing to fight, widely attributed to crack withdrawal. McCall quit crack in 2012 to care for his mother and has fought into his 60s. His story remains a cautionary tale: atomic power in the ring, self-destruction outside. If you enjoyed watching this video, check out our other awesome videos on the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.